So we're going to turn our heads toward comedy. There are new kinds of comedies that become cult, and one of which is a picture called Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Is another movie that found its audience long after it was new. One of the staples of cult films is randy teenagers doing terrible things.
When Sean Penn comes on screen as Spicoli, for a moment, or 70, I thought, where did they get this guy? It seemed like a non-pro. They had found a surfer and just threw him in this thing.
And captures a moment in time, like LA at that time, I think, you know, when we were back at East Coast, it seemed like this is what living in Los Angeles is like. Everyone had their favorites. You know, I was of the Judge Reinhold. I loved him.
If those performances do live on, along with the originality of the story and the storytelling, it resonates with people for much longer, I think.
It's a slice of life of growing up.
I owe my life to Sean Penn.
Yeah, I know that, dude.
Mr. Spicoli.
That's the name they gave me.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High is a year in the life of this high school. Cameron Crowe, the writer, went underground. He was sort of embedded in high school. He was like maybe 20. And he befriended a number of students and got very close to them and wrote a book. Really very true to life, and you just feel like you've been in high school.
It just transcends generations.
You know, Damone, I noticed I was starting to get a pimple this morning.
Right.
I thought maybe
The shyness routine is really starting to aggravate me.
You know, I got 14-year-old kids coming up to me like, oh my God, man, I love your Damone. Hey, you got any tickets?
Got any Blue Oyster Cult?
No, I don't have any Blue Oyster Cult. I ate 34 pairs last time around. Where were you? I was that close to working at 7-Eleven, you know.
To me, Fast Times at Ridgemont High stands out among all the other 80s teen movies because it has this credibility that you just don't see in the other ones.
I mean, it's the first time you ever have a sex scene between a young girl and a boy from the woman's point of view. You know, she's looking up at I guess they're in a dugout. I think they say surf Nazis or something. And we're really seeing not this romanticized nudity, but this kind of grotty uncomfortableness. And later the character will say, you know, I realize...
I don't want sex. Anyone can have sex. Yeah, Stacy, what do you want?
I just want a relationship. And it's so honest.
I really wanted to stick to that whole idea of a year and what happens to the people and their character arcs over the course of a year.
That was my skull. I'm so wasted.
Don't worry, Spicoli. You'll probably squeak by.
Yeah.
I think a lot of teen movies have this sense that nothing you do while you're in high school matters, and therefore the film itself doesn't really think any of it matters. It's just fun. It's just comedy. It's hijinks. There's like panty raids and people getting pie in the face and giant cafeteria food fights. But Fast Times takes a kid's struggle seriously. Like, a kid wants to work at this restaurant and not that restaurant. And when you're an adult, you might think that that's silly. But for the kid, it makes all the difference in the world.
It says 100% guaranteed, you moron.
Mister, if you don't shut up, I'm gonna kick 100% of your ass.
And it has a really nice balance and sympathy between the female characters and the male characters. And I think that's one of the things that makes it such a mass cult movie or a universal cult movie.
The thing that strikes me about our cast and why I think people connect with this movie is everybody was so serious about their craft.
You know, it takes a lot of courage to get up here and do something that you know people will make fun of.
For me, most of the fun was going down to the set when I wasn't working and watching everybody else. Like sitting and watching Sean Penn do a scene, and I think to myself, my God, guy's good.
I've been thinking about this, Mr. Han. If I'm here and you're here, doesn't that make it our time? Oh, gnarly! Wait a minute, there's no birthday party for me here.
And Sean, he'd never really smoked pot in his life. He was completely in character at all times.
Hey, bud, let's party.
When Damone gives the 5-point plan, he tells Ratner to put on a certain album.
Now, this is most important, Rat. It comes down to making out. Whenever possible, put on side 1 of Led Zeppelin 4.
You know, almost every day, Somebody comes up to me and says, you know, when you say put on side one of Led Zeppelin 4 and Kashmir comes on, that's the wrong song.
The song Kashmir was so wonderfully scary and ominous that it just felt like, oh my God, I'm on a date, what am I going to do? It was like, you know, I don't know if I could hum, but do-do-do, do-do. So either Mark Ratner didn't have that album, or they already played that album and now they were up to the next one. It's like one of those things that's up for interpretation.
Universal Pictures presents everything you always wanted to do in high school. See Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
When we first showed Fast Times in a screening for a recruited audience, what does this movie need or what would you add? And one person wrote, more muff.
Yeah, the movie had an X rating because of the scene in the pool house.
When I knew that we were going to have this character lose her virginity, that meant naked women and guys with their shirts off, and I thought, well, that's not right. What if both people were naked?
I can't remember if it was frontal nudity or sidal nudity.
And when the studio saw the cut and sent it to the rating board said, that's an automatic X.
Are you okay?
Oh, I think I came. Didn't you feel it?
Yeah, I guess I did.
I think that they said you can't have that scene and the carrot scene, so you gotta have one or the other.
You've never given a blowjob? Never? Stace, there's nothing to it. It's so easy. Come on, relax your throat muscles. Don't bite. Just slide it in.
So I think they cut down the pool house scene.
When Phoebe Cates comes out of the water, I think that it was every boy's fantasy, and like Phoebe Cates became this like icon of what was beautiful in the 80s.
Oh my God, that was like pulling teeth with her. You don't really need it. You don't? Yes, I do.
Oh, wait just a minute.
I love Amy Heckerling. Like a great teacher who works with the student, she gives them what they need.
I thought, this is somebody I can learn from.
When it was time for the movie to be coming out, the studio was kind of wary.
I didn't see anything that was really so horribly shocking that we did in the movie myself.
They thought, well, nobody's going to like this except maybe some people in California.
But I did get a phone call from a friend and who said they might not release the movie.
So they had a release of 200 theaters and only on the West Coast.
Just everything sunk. I felt like my teeth must have fallen out of my mouth, or my heart fell to my ankles.
And they thought, oh, well, we'll put it out in the rest of the country real quick with no advertising or anything.
How could they do something like that? And thank goodness I was right, because now we're in the Library of Congress.
I guess when you put all the talent together and you put Cameron Crowe and Amy Heckerling and a little bit of mojo, it became a lot more than that,
I am very surprised that it gets all the accolades it does, because I just remember making it going, oh, I hope this makes enough money so that I could do another movie. The fact that anybody knows it so many years later is just shocking to me.
The thing about a Corman movie is you'll get, the lowest salary in the world, and that there's nothing else. You have to make everything up.
Blowing up the high school. That was the hook that made Roger really want to make it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Randall, and this is Rock and Roll High School.
So the plot to Rock and Roll High School, it's very simple. The school authorities hate rock music and want to stop it. Riff Randall lives for rock music.
Riff Randall is desperate to get one of her songs to her favorite band, the Ramones.
She gets in trouble at the school, and the principal takes all their rock and roll records and burns them. So Riff and the school authorities bump heads.
Ultimately, we take over the high school.
The Ramones arrive, they have a concert, and they blow up the school.
My character is the heroine of the movie.
Simple.
It had all the ingredients of a cult movie. Nonconformist characters, rebellious young people. It's like Animal House, except at a high school.
Alan said he saw me in Halloween. He'd seen me in Carrie. And I auditioned 3 times. I was 28 years old at the time, yes. I don't think age ever came up. I had the energy. In fact, I spent all of my intended to be salary, which was $2,100, on my wardrobe once I got the part.
And then I said to Alan, what is your choice? And he said, PJ. I said, we're in a great situation here because PJ is my choice too.
PJ Soul's character was just this bubbly ball of energy. She was kind of like Sandra Dee to the nth degree.
Riff Randall.
And just the way she says, I'm Riff Randall, rock and roller.
And who are you?
I'm Riff Randall, rock and roller.
I just love that.
Miss Togar. Okay, let's talk about Miss Togar.
Mary was sort of an in-house favorite here. Everybody loved her performance in Death Race, and she just seemed right for Miss Togar.
She loves to be really nasty.
Oh, really?
And she knows no bounds.
Girls, skirts below their knees. And boys' hair above their collar.
She can just do whatever she likes, and she's just a horrible person.
If this school is going to get back on the winning track, we have to start cracking down immediately. And I know just where to begin.
So I was perfect.
I knew then, all of a sudden, once I met Mary, that she had been a whip dancer for the Velvet Underground, which raised her beyond category in my book of people I want to know. And she was the funniest person. Factoid about Mary Woronov. She is the #1 guest star in the most popular episode of Charlie's Angels ever. She plays the prison warden in the episode where the angels go to prison.
Get cute in here, and you can get hurt.
Everybody just worked together so hard.
And we all agreed that the best line in the movie was, do your parents know you're Ramones?
Do your parents know that you're Ramones?
August 12th of 1964, and I saw the first evening show of Hard Day's Night. Richard Lester's style and the editing and the attitude, the us versus them.
Are you a mod or a rocker?
No, I'm a mocker.
The sense of the younger people knowing something that the older people didn't. So that was a huge influence.
The idea behind it originally was to feature Cheap Trick, who were just sort of coming into their own then, and I'm not sure what happened.
They were touring and they were starting to break. They wanted $50,000. What about the Ramones? Rocket to Russia is a fantastic record. It has the thing that's Riff Randall. She's a girl from the suburbs who wants to be a punk rocker. And the thing that I love about the Ramones is they're like the Beach Boys backed with chainsaws.
Alan played their music for me and said he liked them, and I thought, these guys are great. I agree with you.
I think I left that day and Alan gave me a cassette of the Ramones. He said, okay, go home, learn these songs, and you know, you're their #1 fan. And we had been listening to the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt and Jackson Browne and Joni Mitchell. And I pressed play and we're like, is that music? We were freaking out.
Very special.
I was with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones at a previous time, but the Ramones are now my favorite group.
The Ramones? I worked with the Velvet Underground. Ramones? Not at all. As a matter of fact, I thought they were nuts. They stayed in a room the whole time. They only demanded a TV and something like, you know, potato chips every 24 hours. They were insane. But they did whatever they were told.
They weren't very good at lines. And Dee Dee couldn't remember, I think the line is, pizza, I want some.
Hey, pizza, great, let's dig in.
Yeah, I want some.
I think that was like 12 takes.
They were so sweet. Just sweet. And half of them were pretty stupid.
It was just brilliant to cast them because they are 50%, 80% of the movie, I would say.
We talked about the set, and they basically told me they wanted to start with, hey ho, let's go. And they didn't really want to do She's the One, but they did because that was the story.
Love your #1 fan, Riff Randall.
When you work for Roger, you got to be really smart. In order to stage the concert at the Rockatorium, we put up flyers everywhere and we charged the extras money to be in the movie.
They did all of these things, man. They would turn the clocks back so they didn't have to pay overtime.
Everyone knew it was going to be the Ramones who were going to be playing all day long, and it was only $2 to go see them.
I mean, these people weren't actors. They were just people, you know, supposedly going to see a show.
So if you look in the audience, it is the LA punk scene. Or you can point them at Darby Crashes in the front row, and then we blow up the high school.
I remember everybody saying, do not stay near the school, do not stay near the school, because Corman used to use this guy.
And this guy's name was Three Fingered Harry.
And then you heard he had a weird reputation for like loving to blow things up.
And I had worked with Three Fingered Harry before. And you knew that when Harry said, this is gonna blow up and you'll be safe if you stand there, everyone in the crew backed up 50 feet.
Then he blew too much up.
And the Ramones all thought it was the greatest. That's their favorite thing. When the school blew up, I mean, they just thought that was so cool.
The fan base for Rock and Roll High School almost seems to grow. For instance, I was there with Alan at a screening in the Hollywood Cemetery at midnight, where against one wall they played Rock and Roll High School, and the cemetery was filled. It was probably the most lively night that cemetery had ever seen.
One of the things that makes the movie work, and I think is one of the things that makes cult movies work, that they are like albums. You play it over and over again because you love it, and then you play it over and over again because as time goes on, you remember how you felt when you first played it. And that goes round and round, and that's why they become cult movies.
It's a very simple plot. It's essentially Romeo and Juliet in Hollywood and the Valley.
But nobody dies in the end.
Hot, very hot. Which way?
If you take the Romeo and Juliet idea and apply it to anything, it's just a good idea.
I mean, let's leave the party.
I'm so sure.
Well, here's what I'll tell you about the use of Val speak in the movie.
Scarfing up everything in sight. I'm sure, I don't know, you know, like, oh, I get so fat and all, and what happened to my zits and get so dirty?
We made an earnest effort to infuse it in the beginning of the movie, sort of set that world, define that universe, and I think the audience sort of takes that with them throughout, was the plan.
Right, and I tell everybody I covered up not knowing Valley Girl. I did listen to Valley Girls, but I thought the way for me to justify my character Lauren being in Valley Girl was that she had this secret, which was that she really was from Malibu. So like she sort of talked like a surfer chick, really. But that's kind of like Valley, like for sure. Your mom's so cool.
Your mom is so bitchin', Susie. Put that back, Lauren. You're too small for that. I am not too small. I look totally hot in this, totally.
You know, it's like that. So it just kind of worked.
Because Valley Girl takes place in Hollywood and the San Fernando Valley of the 1980s, and we had to make a difference between them, the film itself sort of looks at both cultures and tries to tell us something about how they feel about themselves.
Why don't you get out of here? You make me get out of here.
Because the Valley people in my movie hate the Hollywood people, and the Hollywood hate the Valley people more than reality. I made that more of a important fiction. I really started getting a little irritated because all the guys that came in for Randy were gorgeous. And I said, you know, let's look at some other people. Let's look at some people who are not gorgeous in the traditional sense. And I went over to the reject pile. And at the top of the reject pile was Nicolas Cage. So I picked up the picture, held it up, and said, why don't you bring in him and people like this? I said, he's great. That's our Randy. One of the things that would help make the clarity between the Valley and Hollywood obvious was if I had a tough band playing the Hollywood band. I wanted X, because I thought they were really different and radical, and they were very interested.
Maybe we read the script and thought, this is a fucking dumb movie. Why do we want to be in that? I mean, I guess it's a cult thing, and, you know, Nicolas Cage is in it and all that shit, but, like, whatever.
We ended up going to the Plimsolls, which was great.
I mean, I was a huge Plimsolls fan, so when they, you know, came into it, I was really excited. I remember Nick was like, yeah, we got Frederick Forrest. I'm like, we got the Plimsolls. I mean, Melt With You and Million Miles Away, which I'd heard before Valley Girl, and I just thought that's an anthem.
Back then, all these movies were about getting laid. Our movie was not about getting laid at all. Our movie was about being in love, and I think that's what made it a surprise success, and I think that's what's made it enduring.
We were not aware of the circumstances that the actors were living under.
Yeah, Nick did live in his car.
When I found that out, I said, Nick, you can't live in your car.
And this is before cell phones, too, you know, so they'd have to just kind of trust he was going to be there.
Wanna lie? Fuck you, scum!
But he was so there and so solid.
You're a dumb son of a bitch, man. Guys like that'll kill you. Fuck them.
Everyone dated Nick at that time. Everyone was making out with everyone at that time. I made out with Nick at that time, too. Everybody did.
Yeah.
It was just that movie where it's like, you made out with Nick in the trailer? So did I. I made out with Nick in the trailer. It was like everybody was making out with everyone. That's what happens when you do a movie, sometimes.
I've got flexible hours.
Deborah and Nick were seeing each other at one point.
So I didn't find out until the very end of the film that they were dating.
Don't tell me what to do. You have no control over my life.
Because there was a day when she just couldn't, neither one of them could act. That was it. It was just like breaking up at the door, they couldn't act.
I love you. That's all I wanted to say.
So we had to close down for a sec and I had to talk to them both and separate them and, you know, do all that. And that's when they said, no, we're dating. And I suddenly realized, oh my God, that's not going to work out. Not at all.
Just forget I ever tried to save you from your miserable existence.
Cameron Dye was such a great guy. He was so easy to work with, so fun, full of energy, full of ideas, and a great bounce off for Nick. It was a very good combo.
Come off that, man. Hey, look, if you want this girl so bad, why don't you do something about it?
Why wasn't Deborah Foreman on the poster? You should call Deborah Foreman and ask her.
Debbie had said to the producers, I didn't know, that she wanted to be paid.
The distributor was not going to pay her to come in and do promotion for a movie that she should be thrilled to support and promote, but that's not the way she saw it. And so they called her bluff and they hired a model. Sad.
I feel badly. I mean, my leading lady of Valley Girl is not in the poster, which is too bad. You know what? Valley Girl got out there, people saw it, I was aware of that, and that got me a career. So that was what, in a way, Valley Girl really counted as. I wanted a film that you could get more out of if you saw it more than once.
I forget sometimes it's a cult film, you know, it's like, well, a lot of people saw it. It wasn't a blockbuster or, you know, big budget movie. People stop me and they say, you know, it's so much a part of my growing up, and that's a great thing to hear.
And those pieces of that movie that were so comforting, you get to carry with you for decades and decades after that and share it with the people that you love. And those, to me, are the movies that we all hope to make.
Napoleon Dynamite, we talked at all about like production design in these movies, how sometimes that actually adds to the, you know, people that are essentially teenagers and outsiders, and you go to a movie and you see a cool t-shirt or a cool hairdo or someone's wearing a vintage leather jacket, you know, you pick up upon those things.
But wasn't it insanely successful?
There is a cult aspect to that.
No big stars,
Right.
or no, you know.
Right. And it's
Not
purely
really.
on word of mouth. It's
Yeah.
purely people who love the movie, but that's the essence of cult. It's passed down.
Turning people on
from
to it.
person
Well,
to
that was
person.
certainly the
And you
case with
can't
Napoleon
spend money.
Dynamite.
The advertising can't buy it. Was Napoleon Dynamite? Did he look like a nerd eraserhead?
A little bit. Giant glasses, big,
But he had the hair.
curly blonde hair.
But that look then became very
Yeah, it did.
popular, and
Yeah.
everybody needed their vote for Pedro, you know.
And carrying tater tots in your pocket. Became very,
Tater
very
tots
big.
became popular.
Yeah, well, thankfully.
Re-popular.
There are people today in the rap field, you know, that just like, man, you LaFonda, like, I got to call you LaFonda forever.
If I have one regret in life, it's that I didn't take those pants.
Most people either request it or say, what's your favorite line? It's probably, Tina, you fat lard, come get some dinner.
Tina, you fat lard, come get some dinner.
You know, the thing about cult film is I think that it just takes any paradigm and kind of turns it on its side a little bit.
The film became a piece of pop culture because it was its own thing. And it didn't reference. It was one of those films, and I think what helps it to live on through different generations is because there's a timelessness to it.
I think the thing that makes that film resonate is the is that too, the universality.
He's an underdog, and I think that type of story never gets old.
I mean, there was this struggle that everybody was having. I mean, you know, Kip was chatting with babes online and then deciding to go to you know, kung fu school, and Napoleon was just trying to figure out where he fit in the world. I mean, everybody was just trying to just fit.
And this is really, to me, capturing the essence of what a loser slash nerd slash geek slash really kind of underdog character. Plus, I read it and I was like, this is me. This is me and my younger brothers.
Side ponytail, the little fountain.
Your hair looked great today.
The crimped hair. Those hairstyles did come from my childhood. I think that everybody relates to him in different ways as well, because it's either you share qualities with him or you knew somebody in school like him.
Some say love, it is a hunger.
Jared and his wife, Jerusha, they built this perfect script that had every single line was a great line.
What'd you do all last summer again?
I told you, I spent it with my uncle in Alaska hunting wolverines.
Napoleon, don't be jealous that I've been chatting online with babes all day. Besides, we both know I'm training to become a cage fighter.
Have you ever heard of nylon polymer? Napoleon, give me some of your tots.
No, go find your own.
Would you like to look like this?
Took me like 3 hours to finish the shading on your upper lip. All the drawings in the film were done by me, except I will give credit to our art director who did do the unicorn at the very beginning.
Napoleon draws you in because it has a very distinctive feel to it. And once you're in it to win it. You cannot turn it off.
We didn't really think of it as a comedy, even though we were like, well, yeah, but it's its own kind of genre. It's just a film that captures these weird people.
It was probably the silliest, funniest read of a script I've ever read.
Basically, my manager had sent it to me, and he was like...
They were like, I don't get it.
These guys have no money.
They have no money.
We don't know who they are.
There's nobody in it.
I don't think you should do it.
Why do you want to do it? And I was like, because it's great.
I'm coming. I'll do it. I'll be there. I'll tell him I'll drive.
Jared Hess, who wrote and directed the film, he grew up in Preston, and the film itself was pretty much a memoir of his growing up experiences and the experiences of his younger brothers.
I know he knew that the nerd world should be respected. Yeah, that they are as equally sexual and fun and zazzy and all this other good jazz.
The dance scene at the end was, I just felt, well, this is what I do when I mess around with my friends, and I think that's kind of the spirit that Jared wants to capture. So I'll just freestyle. And we just did 3 takes, and then they just kind of took the best bits. And I kept the original Vote for Pedro t-shirt, which I then later traded in for one of the original, what are they called, from Harry Potter? The little golden snitches. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. After we shot the film, we had found out that Napoleon Dynamite was actually an alter ego created for some Elvis Costello album.
We knew we had something special when the whole town of Sundance, everyone, came to see our movies, and there were no spots available. It was 11 o'clock at night, and people were packing in there angrily to get to see this movie. We knew we had something different, and we were perplexed.
To have people receive it the way that they did is, it's not, you can't even describe it as icing on the cake because it's so much more than that. It's amazing. And I know that'll probably never happen again.
People had signs, LaFonda, LaFonda. I'm like, what is this? Honestly, it humbles my spirit. We're so thankful and so grateful. Oh, do I have a favorite scene in the movie? When he was doing the egg and they were all trying to tell the guys and they were paying him in pennies and coins, and you didn't know what he was saying then.
Over there at that creek, man, I found a couple of soaps on the Arrowhead.
$6. It's like $1 an hour.
You know, in the script it says that he talks like a professional wrestler. So I think I got it all from there.
Come down today for your free trial lesson.
Break the wrist, walk away. Break the wrist, walk away. The other hand. My other hand.
Grab my arm. The other arm. My other arm. Okay, now watch this. I'm just gonna break the wrist and walk away. Break the wrist, walk away.
Jeez.
The scene where Uncle Rico throws the steak, like most films, you have some prop guy. You know, they kept throwing and missing. I don't know, it could have been 10, 15 times. And it just would always like maybe nick my hair or get right by me.
Finally, Jared Hess was saying, hey, I think we should move in and just shoot it close and just hit him close. And I just said, if you do that, you ruin the joke.
And finally, it was actually John Grice.
Watch this.
Said, you know what? No. Look, I played baseball in high school and in college. Let me do this. This is supposed to be me anyways. So he grabs it, and I'm riding on a bike. It has to hit me while I'm moving. It was a moving target.
I said, I can hit him. I just got to chuck that steak. And Heater was like, so chuck it.
And he hucks it.
What the heck are you doing?
That's what I'm talking about.
And that's the take. That's the shot where it just nails me.
The slap was resounding in that everybody had to stop from laughing.
And I remember it took every ounce of effort to like not lose it, not break character. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to like, ow.
I'm good with the word cult for our film. I define it for Napoleon Dynamite, embracing your individuality. Cult that.
Napoleon will live forever. Every time there's an adolescent who feels like an outsider, it's a movie that's going to be their go-to. You know, everybody that lives in a small town is going to love it. It's something that everyone can associate with it. It's a great American movie.
Kevin Smith's Clerks is this black and white comedy that's a portrait of the day in the life of a convenience store clerk named Dante, loosely inspired by Kevin Smith himself.
Are you open? Yes. I'm not even supposed to be here today.
When we think about what makes an interesting cult director, a lot of what we're thinking about is somebody who comes from outside the mainstream. They didn't rise up through the NYU ranks, they're not related to anybody in Hollywood, they're a complete outsider. And in 1994, I don't know if you got much more outside than Kevin Smith.
Right, I came from a lower middle class family. Like my mom's always proud of, like, we almost went on food stamps once, almost. So that's how broke we were. So when I fell in love with film, I was like, I have no money to pay for this.
I think what made Clerks such a cult favorite is that it's so relatable to almost everybody. Everybody at one point has either worked a shitty clerking job or they've been in a store with shitty clerks.
Well, this is the last time I rent here.
You'll be missed.
Screw you!
Hey, you're not allowed to rent here anymore.
Yeah!
When you show people in the workplace, you're holding up a mirror to the world. And, you know, look, not everyone works at a convenience store, but everybody's had a shitty job. And everybody knows the convenience store is the crossroads of the world, man. The highest of born and the lowest of low cross the threshold. Everyone needs milk and cigarettes, right?
I'm stuck in this pit, working for less than slave wages.
Clerks is, of course, the wet dream of any independent cinema maker. You make this film in some hellish convenience store in Jersey for $10, and then Miramax gives you, 3 dump trucks full of money, and you get a career.
Kevin Smith's story with Clerks is he'd been working at the same convenience store since he was 19 years old. And finally, he's like, well, this is the setting of my movie. If I can make a movie anywhere, I'm going to do it here.
Suddenly, there were these other people giving me a notion that, like, oh, you can use credit cards for things that aren't just like buying Star Wars figures. You could literally finance a movie on it. That guy bought a house on it. That guy made a movie on it. Maybe you could do that.
It's this great example of what a director can do with limitations.
I was working at this point at RST video store that's in the movie Clerks. And I was the only one ever there, right? So invariably, a credit card company calls, and they're like, we're checking on credit rating and Kevin Smith. I was like, oh, our store manager, he makes $50,000 a year and stuff. They're like, that's all we need to know, bam. And they would send me credit cards.
Well, when we shot the movie, we all had real jobs. I mean, Kevin worked at the store. Kevin asked the permission of the owner if he could use the store. Now, she knew that he had gone to film school.
I dropped out of film school early. I said, hey man, I want to shoot a movie here in the convenience store. Can I do that? And they said, oh yes, just come back to work. 10:30 at night, we'd start making the movie, and we'd shoot the movie until 6 in the morning when the store opened again, or rather, when I opened the store again.
Comedy really works well if you can come from someplace unexpected, and like a convenience store in New Jersey at the time was a pretty unexpected place. There's a really filthy but very funny scene where he's reading off the names of increasingly foul porn movies while he's on the phone to a distributor.
Okay, I need one each of the following tapes. Whispers in the Wind, To Each His Own, Put It Where It Doesn't Belong, My Pipes Need Cleaning, All Tit Fucking Volume 8, I need your cock, ass-worshipping rim jobbers.
Shooting in black and white was pure cost consideration. Now, when the movie went to festivals later on and whatnot, smart people started seeing it, they would say things like, the fact that it's shot in black and white gives one the perspective of the video store monitor, omnipresent in every video store. They thought it was brilliant. And it was not. It was necessity being the mother of invention. But you better be sure, I started going out there being like, well, we shot it in black and white because it was meant to be the perspective of the security store camera on our boys' lives.
So when I heard that Miramax picked up the film, I mean, it was great because Miramax at the time was the kings of bringing out, new and independent filmmakers.
This is a movie that didn't have to be made, but this figure, by sheer force of will, made it happen. To make an art house movie that somehow gets to Cannes and Sundance, which is insane.
They put in $1 million mix into the sound mix and cleaned it up, blew it up from 16mm up to 35mm.
Smoking weed, doing coke, drinking beers. Pack her ass, my good man. Time to kick back, drink some beers, and smoke some weed.
So it was so funny that they put in more money than we could have made like 25 other films with the $30,000 that we made the first film with.
What did you like better, Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back?
Empire.
Blasphemy.
When the film first got rated, it was rated an NC-17. NC-17 is a step below rated X, and that's usually for films that are extremely violent or extremely, explicit sex scenes or whatever. And we had none of it. All it was because of dialogue.
37. My girlfriend sucked 37 dicks.
In a row?
Hey, try not to suck any dick on the way through the parking lot. Hey, you, get back here.
You know what it is? It's not so much my girlfriend sucked 37 dicks. It's the description of what snowballing is. I think that's what got it for them. Because even when I read it in the script, I was like, what the hell is snowballing?
After he gets a blowjob, he likes to have it spit back into his mouth while kissing. It's called snowballing.
Is that really a thing? And he's like, oh yeah, that's a thing. I'm like, how do you know this? Oh, I've read things.
It had never been given to a movie for language before. And so the chairman of Miramax decided that he'd hire Alan Dershowitz to represent the movie, to defend the movie to the MPAA. So this became a censorship issue. And so as we're sitting there, he's like, it's an outrage that this movie has been rated NC-17. Miramax blew it up into this big deal. They had this letter that they had a bunch of filmmakers sign. I was barely a minute and a half into my career, and all of a sudden there was this kind of we the undersigned feel that Clerks should be R, not NC-17. And Martin Scorsese's name was one of the names on the list. I was like, this is nuts.
But I do remember that, of course. And it was a matter of one phrase in it that some of the raters knew what it meant. And we went to Urban Dictionary, and in fact, that is what it meant, and it was not suitable. We felt parents would think it wasn't suitable. It was as simple as that.
Then I got up and got to talk about it I'm a kid myself. I made this movie. This is how we talk, blah, blah, blah. We left the theater. 3 minutes later, they opened the doors and everyone started coming out, and some guy came up to me and said, congratulations, man, I can't wait to see that at midnight at Laemmle.
I think the concept of being NC-17 for one joke, I think they just felt that it was too harsh.
We won. We flipped the rating. Basically everyone in the jury was just like, oh yeah, this is not an NC-17 rated movie. We didn't have to make a single cut and stuff.
When it was overturned, I justified it in my mind thinking, most people who are going to see this movie aren't going to know what it means, so we won't look ridiculous.
Clerks was the greatest thing in the world that ever happened to me. And it's 25 years since it's happened, and I've done many things since then, but I still fucking come back to Clerks.
One of my favorites is Office Space. I do love Office Space.
Plot itself is a little convoluted. It's kind of set in workplace America, a very bland version of workplace America that sort of has all the life sucked out of it. And it's about a guy that's not happy there. Want to go to Chachki's? Get some coffee?
Oh, it's a little early.
I gotta get out of here. I think I'm gonna lose it.
Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
What would it look like if I didn't put up with this shit?
I think that in other movies and even TV shows before The Office, people tried to spike it up a little bit to make it kind of fun and funny, and Mike was like, no, it's awful.
I just stare at my desk, but it looks like I'm working. I do that for probably another hour after lunch, too. I'd say in a given week, I probably only do about 15 minutes of real, actual work.
It really is a movie about the new
American economy. I mean, these deadening cubicle office jobs. This was a comedy about how, going forward, the job you were going to have was going to suck.
Why does it say pepper jam when there is no pepper jam? I swear to God, one of these days I just kick this piece of shit out the window.
If you want me to wear 37 pieces of flair like your pretty boy over there, Brian, why don't you just make the minimum 37 pieces of flair?
This was Mike's first live-action movie.
Well, it started out as an animated short that I'd done a long time ago, and when I was doing that, I was thinking of it more as possibly a TV show, but just sort of a series of vignettes about just office character types. I finally said, well, what if Milton's a character in it?
If Sandra's going to listen to her headphones while she's falling, then I should be able to listen to the radio while I'm collating. So I don't see why I should have to turn down the radio. Because
all right. I'd love to say I created this character and I started from scratch and I wove this great, invention. None of that's true. All of it was in the animation. Everything down to the yas and the greats and that kind of monotone voice. So I just stole it with the director's permission.
I'm going to need you to go ahead and move your desk again. So, well, if you could go ahead and just get it as far back into that corner as possible, that'd be terrific. But that way we'll have some more room for some of these boxes and things we need to put in here.
I'm going to have to ask you to go ahead and move your desk again. So if you could go ahead and get it as far back against that wall as possible, that would be great.
No, because I was...
That way we'll have some room for some of these boxes and things we need to put in here.
Then Fox said, why don't you make a movie like Car Wash, where it's just a bunch of people that work at this place, and I thought, okay, I can do that. And so I can't remember what the plot of Car Wash was.
I worked up this Owen Wilson impression, and I was like, this is going to be great. And I was rehearsing it out in the lobby, and so it comes my time, the door opens, and Owen Wilson walks out. So I go, shit! I can't do a better impression than Owen Wilson can do of Owen Wilson.
Hold it. This is getting confusing.
So in the doorway, I came up with the character of Lawrence, of just a dude who, talks like this and whatever. It was like literally just what I came up with at that exact second.
Hey, she hasn't been over here in a while. You two still going out?
Yeah. I guess. I don't know. Sometimes I get the feeling like she's cheating on me.
Yeah, I get that feeling too, man.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know, man. I just get that feeling looking at her, like she's the type of chick that just... Ugh.
I worked at Jack in the Box. Whenever the manager would say, yeah, Mike, could you go ahead and, why don't you go ahead and change the fryers? Like, go ahead, like I was just chomping at the bit to go do that, and I'm just going to turn you loose on those fryers now, so you just go ahead and change those fryers.
If you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great. We're going to need to go ahead and move you downstairs into storage B.
No. That sounds good, Peter. And we'll go ahead and get this all fixed up for you.
The reason it works so well is because everybody knows that guy. He's just that annoying, passive-aggressive, he's a prick.
And I thought, if nothing else, if I can capture Gary Cole doing that character, then I'll make this movie. It'll at least be that,
Yeah, I worked a bunch of different office jobs, and I got to see little pieces of all of them. And I had stuff that was like mindless drudgery, and I had stuff where you see the politics. That's really the other piece of the puzzle as to why I got the part.
Ron was great. The most challenging thing about that was getting the studio to agree to make the movie with him, because, he wasn't a big star. I just thought he was a great actor. And
I think by the time I was actually went in into audition, they'd seen every single other actor in Hollywood, many of whom I think would have been great in the movie, but they couldn't meet either the studio's criteria or Mike's criteria. They were like, all right, fine, just you want the guy, take the guy, go.
So I was sort of imagining this, like a young Charles Grodin vibe, and Ron was one of the only people that played it that way.
And the other thing that happened, too, that I'm really grateful for was that when Jennifer Aniston agreed to do it, it took a lot of the onus off of me being a name that people would know, which I wasn't. I want to take you out to dinner, and then I want to go back to my apartment and watch Kung Fu. Do you ever watch Kung Fu?
I love Kung Fu.
Channel 39.
Totally.
When I was working an engineering job, one day we just said, let's go try this TGI Fridays place. And God, the waiter was just, he was in the referee shirt. His voice just kept getting higher when he talked, like, "I'm gonna get you today." And,
So can I get you gentlemen something more to drink? Or maybe something to nibble on? Some pizza shooters, shrimp poppers, or extreme fajitas?
Just coffee.
Okay. Sounds like a case of the Mondays.
It's just a nightmare come true.
Like a year later, I hadn't thought about the movie since, because it's bombed. And these two dudes are in like a pickup truck, and they're looking at each other and look over at me. I'm like, hey, and I go, "Hey, what'd you do with $1 million?" That night.
2 chicks at the same time, man.
2 chicks at the same time, dude. And they go, "Right on!"
My favorite scene in the movie is still the assault of the printer in an open field to rap music.
One of the oddest compliments we got on that scene was a very, very scary-looking individual approached Dave Herman and just raved about that scene. And at the end said, "'Cause that's exactly how it goes down."
I was in Blockbuster, and I see this girl and her friend pick up Office Space. She goes, "Oh my God, have you seen this?" And I kind of followed them around to see if they were really going to rent it. And they did.
The 10th year reunion in Austin, we did a screening. And then it was like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Everybody knew every line and the peals of laughter pouring down. I was like, oh, okay, now we're talking. It was great. That was my journey.
There's something in that movie that doesn't have anything to do with an office, doesn't have anything to do with the workplace. It really just has to do with the idea of like what it is to be a human being and seek enlightenment, you know? And in a weird way, Peter was a guy who we were making fun of him as he was finding his version of enlightenment, which was a really goofy version.
Here we are at the Mayflower Dog Show.
They come to the Mayflower with their crates, their kibble, and their cookies. And most important, with a will to win that only a fellow dog can truly appreciate.
The Christopher Guest mockumentary, Best in Show, which is a comic masterpiece, represent the triumph of the improvisatory style.
What's with the little plumber butt thing happening on the hip?
These pom-poms are keeping Butch's hips warm from the cold water. The hip joints is very important.
Chris Guest finds the insanity behind what looks like ordinary things.
Say, get up, Jerry.
I kept saying, I can't dance. I can't. I've got 2 left feet.
I thought he was kidding.
But when they tell me they love that movie, I always ask, are you a dog person? And the answer is usually yes.
She's fine. You know what? She's feeling chuffed. Feeling full of herself, aren't you?
And I think it comes from just knowing how you are about your dog, which is smart, and how others are about their dogs, which is really dumb. You know? So it's that one more little kick of superiority that we like.
What do you see in front of me? You see a big blue ribbon. It's right here in front of you. You want it? You come and you grab it. You get it.
She's not
get
listening to you. She's nurse. She's freaking out.
Well, get the busy bee.
What's more wonderful than loving dogs and raising them and putting them in the Westminster Kennel Club, and it's all elegant in its way. And of course, he goes back underneath it and reveals that everybody who's involved in this thing is nuts.
I think anything is ripe for satire if it takes itself very seriously.
You know, people say, oh, but he's so much older than you. And you know what? We both have so much in common. We both love soup.
Well, there's an outline of a script, so you know the whole story. He tells you what your character is going to be. And I call the office, I say, there's no lines in here for me. They say, oh, it's just you and Jim are going to ad lib.
Stewardess, can I take a Shih Tzu on my carry-on, or does it have to be stowed?
Yes, that's
So is that a Shih Tzu?
an old joke, but a good one nevertheless. Yes, still.
That's a crowd pleaser.
So we filmed it in about 4 hours, our version of it.
Really, I went to one of those obedience places once. It was all going well till they spilled hot candle wax on my private parts.
And you don't know if things is going well till, Chris yells, all right, cut, and then you hear laughter.
Fred doesn't use his turn signal. So he's liable to go off this way, and you better follow him.
Joe Graggiola was the actual color guy, so Christopher had sent me a video.
It was a good ball club. We lost 112 games that year.
And suddenly I was in this tempo of Joe Garagiola. Oh my God, he jumped on that woman like she was made out of ham.
Come on, Chris, right around here. Let's try again.
This does not look good.
No, he went after her like she's made out of ham.
So at one point I repeated a joke twice in a second take. He said, you said the same thing last year, just inadvertently. And it worked wonderfully because this was not the first year I'd worked with him. And you'd imagine he says, oh, I got to be stuck with this guy again. So it worked out great.
I don't think I ever could get used to being probed and prodded. I told my proctologist once, hey, why don't you take me out to dinner and a movie sometime, you know?
Yes, I remember you said that last year. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Jane Lynch. I think one of my favorite subtle lines that she said her parents had a wonderful, happy relationship for 20 years until my mother committed suicide.
You know, she was there for the unconditional love. And it worked for my family, you know, until my mom committed suicide in '81.
Chris's character in Best in Show. That's a lonely sack of shit, that guy.
Hey, Judge, look at me. He's not, the dog ain't gonna talk, but his mind is like a telepathy.
God bless Christopher Guest, because he hired you, he could have gotten anyone, and let you do your own thing, and you create your own character, so if it doesn't go over, you don't say, well, I wasn't really quite right for this role, you know. You have no one to blame.
Show it to somebody who's got a dog, and they'll see that movie over and over again.
To this day, it's like mind-blowing that it had this kind of impact on people and became a cult movie.
Yeah, it's a bowling comedy about a bowler who could have been the best bowler of all time and was struck down tragically early in his career and had to come back and redeem himself later on. It's basically The Natural.
Conceptually, the whole notion of this dim-witted ex-professional bowler who's down on his luck and on the skids, and he encounters this kind of Amish naif who, it turns out, has these gifts that he wants to bring as his ticket back into the wild and prosperous world of professional bowling. Like, really? It's both over the top and under the radar at the same time.
I think Kingpin was totally overlooked in the theaters. I don't think it did very well. And I think people just realized that it's a very funny film. For whatever reason, people just didn't go.
Roy Munson, a man-child. If he strikes, he's the 1979 Odor Eaters champion. He's got one foot in the frying pan and one in the pressure cooker.
I can't say specifically why the movie became a cult movie. If the movie had opened big like we had hoped it would, then we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it as a cult movie. But the fact that it flopped so badly when it came out and then found an audience later, it was #1 on video 4 weeks in a row.
Hey,
No
way.
So it kind of happened fast. The cult status, it was like 6 months later, all of a sudden everybody's watching Kingpin. I don't know what happened.
Kingpin had such heart, and at the core, I think, was this human struggle that I think everybody can relate to. But he's also going through this internal struggle where he's really, I think, wants to be a better person and wants to make better choices. And you see that journey from the beginning to the end.
We are going to do what we set out to do. We're going to win that tournament.
Yes! I knew it. I knew you were a champion the minute I saw you bowl, Ish.
I'm not gonna bowl. You are.
The people who really get Kingpin get that part of it as well as the funny. And the combination of that is just kind of rare.
Woody Harrelson was my roommate when I moved to LA. I had known Woody for years, and before we did the movie. We had Woody, we got Randy, and we had not cast the Big Earn McCracken role. We were talking to those guys, so we'd like to get Bill Murray, but we don't know how to reach him. And Randy said, I have his number. He's got his 800 number. He had already made a movie with him, so he said, call him, see what'll happen. He called him, he sent him the script. Like 2 days later, he said, yeah, we'll do it.
Tanqueray and tap.
Keep them coming, sweets. I got a long drive. Do me a favor, will you? Do you mind washing off that perfume before you come back to our table?
We're like, you're kidding me. He said, no, he's going to do it. He said, well, what do we do? He said, he's going to be here on the 23rd. It's like, why? Because he starts shooting on the 24th. It's like, well, what about working out a deal? He'll work it out when he gets here. It was like that. And we just had to take our chances. But it's worth it because, you know, Bill Murray might come in the door. And he did. He walked in the door at exactly 11 o'clock in the morning when he was supposed to be there on the 23rd. Had plans, he had brought his own bowling clothes. He had the idea for the hair. You know, he had thought the thing through. And basically the producers got together with him, cut a deal in about a half hour, and he did it. I've been following Vanessa Angel for a while, believe it or not, from the TV show Weird Science. She was on that, and I just thought she popped. I didn't want to, you know, go with somebody who just naturally looks like they were a ball breaker. I wanted somebody who looked sweet and could be a ball breaker. And so we got her, and she came in. She was sensational. It couldn't have been better.
Look, your act is about as fresh as a Foghat concert. It really bites, Roy.
Bill Murray showed up, And we gave him the sides, you know, which is the stuff you're going to shoot that day, like 5 pages of what we're shooting that day. And he looked at it and he goes, yeah, okay, I get it. He threw it on the floor and I thought, oh, Christ, this isn't good. And he went on to nail everything so much funnier than what we had written.
Watch the door.
Everything he did was ad-libbed, and it's the only time we've ever had that. Jim Carrey sticks to the script, you know. Everybody sticks to the script, and then goes off. Bill never stuck, and it was always better.
Hi. Not you. Hi.
We learned very quickly not to yell cut at the end of a scene because, you know, normally, you know, you let it roll a little and then you yell cut. But Bill, you really got to open it up. You just got to, you got to yell cut when Bill gets up and leaves the set.
I think my favorite scene probably when we're sitting in the car and I kind of just, you know, tap down the comb over and I say, you look really sharp. And I don't know, there's just something about that moment that is just very real, and you can sort of see both their vulnerability, and it's very poignant.
Real sharp.
I do love the fight scene.
You've been rubbing your tits in that kid's face from the moment we hooked up so that you could steal him from me.
What?
Don't give me that wet crap.
So I remember Peter came out to me and said, well, we're gonna build this like mechanical breast thing that's gonna move this way and that way, and he's gonna like pummel it, and it's gonna be really funny. And I was like, really? I just took a leap of faith that it would look funny and it would work, and it did. That was literally a mechanical thing where it had a wire and the guy kind of made it move from side to side down when, yeah, it was literally like a little machine.
Hello. Oh my God. Claudia? You two know each other? It's a small world when you've got unbelievable tits.
When we get to the final, match, and Bill gets up and he has to roll 3 strikes in a row.
I need you now more than ever. I need you.
Bill takes the ball, boom, strike. Place goes crazy. Takes his time, comes up again. Shoo. Strike. Place goes crazy. I'm thinking this can't be happening. Gets up again, third one. Place exploded. It was like a real tournament. People went crazy. They went nuts, and the crew was going like, "Oh my God!" And Bill was so proud of himself. He was truly like, "Yeah," you know. It just couldn't have worked out better. Roy's bigger victory is he gets self-esteem, pride, integrity, and his character back. Woody was a horrific bowler. He was horrible. We had him work with a couple of pros. They just on form and how to look like a bowler at least, because he was just awful. So we could film him and say, okay, this guy, he could possibly be a bowler. He never got better. And we used to always, whenever we're doing setups for the next shot, we'd bowl. We're in a bowling alley. We were in bowling alleys all the time. So as they're setting up down here, we're down the end and we're having bowling matches. I actually threw a 233 one day. And I had another game, 213. I had a 207. We're bowling all day long for 2 months. You get better. I swear to you, Woody never broke 80. But Bill Murray was excellent. Randy was a superstar. Randy has a great curve, left-handed, big hook. He was great. We'd only had one movie, and that was Dumb and Dumber, which did great. And then Kingpin came out, and we thought that would do great. We loved that movie. I thought if you did a movie that's good, it's going to do great. And that's just not the way it is. Sometimes movies fall through the cracks. That's why you're doing this thing. This is all cult movies that were great movies that didn't do great. You're always afraid when a movie doesn't do well that's the end of your career, without question. And that was a moment, yes, that was one of those moments. 6 months later, it came out on DVD or, video and started finding an audience, and then we were allowed to do another movie. I had an interesting thing happen. About 6 months later, when it came out on DVD, I got a call from Geffen. I don't know Geffen. Okay. He calls me at home, and he says, hey, listen, I saw your movie Kingpin, and my buddy brought it over to the house, and he said he wants to play this bowling movie. I told him, no way, I'm not watching a bowling movie. He goes, no, you got to watch this. He goes, I'm not watching a bowling movie. He goes, you're watching the movie. So we played it last night. He goes, hysterical, unbelievably good. Yet, I never, ever would have bought that movie if you would pitch it to me. So whatever you want to do next, I'll do it, no matter what it is. I said, awesome, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Hung up. About 6 months later, we figured out we wanted to do something about Mary Left, so I called him up and I pitched it to him. He passed. That's how hard the movie business is.
We were 5 very close friends, and we really wrote that movie together. You want to take this one, Rod?
Hell yeah!
I bet you do.
Let's go!
It takes place on the Vermont-Canada border, and it follows 5 highway patrolmen who patrol that area. But there's so little crime and there's so little traffic up there that they kind of make up games to amuse themselves.
How about cat game? Cat game? What's the record? Thorny did 6, but I think you can do 10. 10? Starting right in meow.
Hurry up, Meow.
Sorry.
There's something funny here, boy?
No.
Well, then why are you laughing, Mr. Larry Johnson? All right, Meow, where were we?
I'm sorry, are you saying meow?
Am I saying meow?
Like last night, I was at some fancy event. They were in a tuxedo. I was in a tuxedo. And they said, you know, essentially, it goes some normal conversation followed by meow. And you're just sitting there going, all right, okay.
Don't think, boy. Meow, do you know how fast you were going? Meow, what is so damn funny?
I could have sworn you said meow.
Do I look like a cat to you, boy?
When someone would do the meow thing to me where I would be like, I would just think, oh, this person smokes a lot of pot. Because there was like this generation of college students that didn't see it in theaters, but would consume the movie and watch it over and over again.
Am I drinking milk from a saucer? No. Well, do you see me eating mice? Hey, you stop laughing right now.
But it was fascinating to see the impact and just how the impact didn't diminish.
But no buts, Meow. That's the law. Not so funny, Meow, is it? Meow.
You know, there's indies where like, hey, there's some place for you to sit down, and then there's indies where they're like, we didn't think you might need a chair. You know what I mean? So it was one of those indies where they're like, can you just stand over here while we figure out what we're going to do?
We come up with the idea, and then we sit in a room for about, a month, I'd say, and we smoke joints. Eventually, you get towards what will be a story. We shot the film near Poughkeepsie, New York, and we lucked out because there was a 7-mile stretch of highway that connected 2 other roads. The highway patrol showed up, and the local police showed up at the same time to shut down the exit. And I was standing there, and they're arguing over whose jurisdiction this was. And the highway's like, this is the highway, so we control the exit onto the highway. And the local guy's like, no, this is part of the town. That's the highway.
It does? Oh, my God!
You want to go up there, fine, but we're shutting down this. And so these guys are arguing, and I'm like, that's our movie.
Back it up, Grady. I'm serious.
What's the point? Did you guys get shut down already? Oh, yeah, that's next week.
You got to be careful what you write.
1, 2, 3.
Because you're going to have to do it.
Do it.
In the original syrup chugging scene, we bought iced tea, and we made it very, very thick. But when you look at it on film, it just looks like thick iced tea. It doesn't have the viscosity that we needed. We sent a production assistant to Kmart or something, and they came back with like 12 bottles of maple syrup.
I am all that is man.
I drank 2.5 full bottles, and because I'm the director, I made Eric do more takes, and I made him drink 3.5. If you ended up the day and you had diabetes at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, I get it. After the scene, and I tried to go throw it up, but Eric was coming out of the bathroom already. He goes, it's not coming up. It's too thick. And we went to my trailer, and we turned out the light, and we just laid on the ground and shivered for all lunch, just laid there shivering. Because there's a reason maple syrup is part of the master cleanse. And, I'll spare you the details, but I shot like a fossilized bird, like a stick with a fully intact leaf. Things that I definitely don't remember eating, but they came out whole. I'll never do that again.
These boys get that syrup in them, they get all antsy and they're pantsy.
They just can't keep them under control.
We had a laser disc of Blade Runner. There's that great scene where Harrison Ford is like using that computer to kind of dig deeper and enhance, and so we thought that'd be a funny little gag.
Enhance. 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 Just print the damn thing!
I think what made Super Troopers a cult film favorite is that we put energy into every second of it.
There, fucker! Do you need assistance?
We just made a movie where we were cops. We didn't expect it to go anywhere, let alone go to Sundance and sell it. We didn't think anything like that would happen.
All right, come on. Oh, what is it now? Oh, right. Strange tattooed creature.
It broke every convention while on the surface being very, very conventional. It's so out there.
No one could have predicted Monty Python and the Holy Grail because the Monty Python we knew from television worked in little bursts, kind of one-joke, surreal sketches.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
No one thought they could string together an entire feature.
The first thing people, if you want to understand the Holy Grail, is that we had no idea what we were doing. I mean, the plot is almost non-existent.
The plot of Monty Python and the Holy Grail is based on the Arthurian legend of finding the Holy Grail.
Arthur, King of the Britons. Oh, don't grovel. One thing I can't stand, it's people groveling.
Sorry.
And don't apologize.
I think Monty Python and the Holy Grail changed movies because it was sort of the first movie that was unabashedly silly while taking itself incredibly seriously, which is what their show did so well. They do a whole movie where it's mostly just the six of them playing all the characters.
No more, no less.
And we just kind of go with it. We're not like, well, but he was playing, like you just kind of go with it. They're all playing completely different people every scene.
I'm Arthur, King of the Britons.
Bravely bold Sir Robin, brought forth from Camelot.
Behold your humble servant, Sir Lancelot of Camelot.
A Sir Galahad.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail is a cult classic because we know it's funny, it's satirical, but the movie's smart.
Look, my liege. Camelot. It's only a model.
Yeah, the coconut scene was absolutely crucial. If Michael Palin had not written that, there wouldn't have been the film, because the first draft, we threw away 90% of it. There were scenes about King Arthur walking around Harrods and going to the pet department to buy an ant as a pet. I mean, we just threw out 90% of it. Well, what we realized was solid gold was this scene that Michael had written with the coconuts. And that obviously, because we couldn't afford horses, we couldn't afford one horse. So once we realized that that was the gold there, the gold dust, then we were sort of built around that time period. But at the beginning, we didn't have that as a starting idea.
And they're showing you the absurdity of politics and religion and hypocrisy.
Strange women lying in ponds, distributing swords is no basis for a system of government.
Visually resourceful gags, linguistically resourceful gags.
The castle of... What is dead? He must have died while carving it. Oh, come on. Well, that's what it says. Look, if he was dying, he wouldn't bother to carve Arg.
Eric Idle's, which I later found out was an ad-libbed line when he's being the bring out your dead guy.
Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead!
King Arthur walks by and he goes,
Who's that then? I don't know. Must be a king. Why? He hasn't got shit all over him.
They somehow or other made space in this movie for every single bit of surreal silliness they possibly could.
Jesus Christ!
And I think it kind of showed it could follow a very, very well-trod formula of like the King Arthur story or the epic kind of medieval movie, and yet have these insane cartoon cutaways in it.
By the time we started it, we thought we had some really funny material. And also the two Terrys who directed it together have got tremendous energy and dedication, whereas Eric and I are lazy bastards and get away with as little as we can, you know? So the Terrys deserve a lot of praise for actually getting it done.
Not a lot of people know this, but the movie was actually funded by 3 rock bands.
Somebody discovered that the British government had just brought in some legislation to encourage British filmmaking, which was basically a kind of tax dodge.
Led Zeppelin, who was the biggest band in the world at the time, Pink Floyd, who was cruising from the Dark Side of the Moon, and then Genesis, and they were all just super fans of Monty Python's Flying Circus, and so they were like, yeah, you guys want to make a movie? We'll put up this. We would love to see a movie like that.
I fart in your general direction.
The taunter came out of the fact we discovered that there actually were taunters in these medieval battles.
Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries.
Terry Gilliam believes that the more difficulties there are, the more people are squabbling, and the worse the conditions, then the better the art is. I don't know how he came to that conclusion, but he is quite batty.
What is your favorite color? Blue. Right, off you go.
Oh, thank you.
Comedy requires relaxation, because that's when people's timing gets better. But we were young. We were young. But we found this one castle, Doone Castle, D-O-O-N-E, I think, and we used that at different angles, so it played the part of several castles.
One of the things that sometimes makes a cult movie take hold is a scene of extreme gore. And of course, the Black Knight encounter, that was the thing that kids came out of that movie talking about, that everybody was so shocked by. They couldn't imagine slapstick and gore paired together like that.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary. 'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? All right, we'll call it a draw.
The reason that people love it so much is that the first 50 minutes is really funny. And then I don't think it's so good after that. I think it goes off a bit. I love the scene where Michael tries to tell Graham Chapman and Eric Idle to keep his son in the room and not let him out. That's one of my favorite scenes, wonderfully performed.
Make sure he doesn't leave.
The prince?
Yes, make sure he doesn't leave.
Oh, yes, of course. I thought you meant him. You know, it seemed a bit daft me having to guard him when he's a guard.
Is that clear?
Oh, quite clear, no problems.
Right. Where are you going?
We're coming with you.
The word we used more than anything else was silly. If anything was really silly, we thought it was hilarious.
I have to push the Pramalot.
On second thoughts, let's not go to Camelot. It is a silly place.
Well, I think the reason you picked Holy Grail is that you made the same mistake that American audiences have been making for decades. You think it's much, much better than it is.
Right, Sonny, that's enough. Just pack that in.
You want to start from the beginning?
Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is beyond anything. It is still almost the perfect movie if you watch it. It never goes bad. It gets better, like a fine wine. Every year, it gets more and more jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
You know?
It's got everything. It's got music, fast editing. It's very modern.
Transgender, beheading, Manson. It has everything.
Beyond the Valley of Dolls, when it came out, was quite a scandal because this was an X-rated. This and Myra came out around the same time. They were both X-rated, and they were both from a big studio
and hated by critics. Yeah.
Beyond the Valley of the Dolls exists in a very unique time and place in cinema, and that is the very early 70s.
Absurd, satirical tragicomedy about a group of naive girls.
They're part of a rock band called the Carrie Nation.
Lately you feel so insecure.
And come to California.
It really is an artifact of its era.
He really captured what was going on in that particular moment.
I think it was destined for cult classic. I think Roger Ebert, the writer, even knew at the time it was going to be something like that.
A lot of people in hot tubs, and a lot of people doing the frug and the shag.
Oh, they just banned my last film in Cincinnati.
When I'm with you, pussycat, who needs grass? You'd have to see it to believe it. Of course, I nearly choked.
pretty cultish to begin with, isn't it?
And at this point, the old studio guard was falling apart. They no longer really knew what the kids wanted to see. The production code, which had been in effect from 1934, was woefully out of date. And there's this really sense that, we had to push the envelope, and in a countercultural forward time, that we pushed it rightly, you would get this audience.
Giving an X rating to Beyond the Valley of the Dolls was certainly the ticket. It opened the doors for Joe Normal to go to an X movie and not have to hide in a raincoat.
But in today's horrifying world, it wouldn't have gotten an X rating, it would have gotten an R rating.
Probably that helped to make it a cult classic, because when someone can't get something they wanted, and it became a cult movie because it was discovered again.
I always wonder what it was like for Roger Ebert in 1970 to be this famous film critic and then release a movie that is an X. Roger Ebert, to put his name on a film that crazy, takes so much courage.
And Russ always used some sort of theme running through his films that was the social topic of the time. I mean, in Vixen, it was the communist hijacking the plane. And then Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, of course, it was the Manson. That sort of ran through, especially at the end. I mean, it's hard not to see that.
What makes the movie fascinating to me is that it's making fun of its time, which is the late 60s, early 70s, but it's actually being filmed during its time, which makes it kind of one step ahead or smarter than the films that it's spoofing.
And adds a very conscious layer of social satire.
No, in L.A. L.A.? Where is that?
We'd get crushed.
Not us.
Smog. Can't see.
Climb a tall tree.
Lousy traffic.
Love to walk.
No culture.
Grooves a lot.
Cold and cruel.
Swimming pool.
Phony city.
So pretty.
Religious nuts.
Not only a satire of Hollywood, it's a musical.
But it looks so much like, oh, cool, this is going to be like a 60s kind of like rock and roll movie. And it's just it goes nuts almost immediately.
You're a groovy boy. I'd like to strap you on sometime.
They just loved it or thought it was a piece of trash.
If I could pick one actor from all of cult film history and anoint him into leading man status, I would absolutely do John Lazar.
Ronnie Barzell? You mean Z-Man Barzell?
I read that script, and I just love that character. I mean, how about starting at the top?
This is my happening, and it freaks me out.
Oh, it's a stone gas man.
Pray, we must make haste. My time is not my own. Before the clock strikes 12, I must be back at Forest Lawn.
When Z-Man gets a little testy, you will drink the black sperm of my vengeance.
You will drink the black sperm of my vengeance!
When you look at what John Lazar is pulling off in that movie, he's running around in tights and quoting Shakespeare and murdering people and being dangerous and sexy and scary and powerful and charismatic. I mean, that is a guy who I think could have done anything, or he at least could have had the best career playing brilliant villains.
And indeed, it is not a game we play. I am Superwoman.
I mean, I'm running around with tits and the sword, and there's drugs, rock and roll, sex.
Oh my God, no. You've been a broad all along, right, Barzell? Goddamn broad! Goddamn ugly broad, Barzell! An ugly broad!
The scene that most people remember was the scene where my head gets blown off by Z-Man. Yes, it was a tough scene to shoot, first of all, because the gun, it was scraping the roof of my mouth. The makeup man that won the awards for Planet of the Apes is the one that made the mask that they had tubes running through, and they pushed down on the tubes, and then blood would squirt out my nose, my mouth, and my eyes. The outfit that Z-Man ends up giving me when we take acid or whatever it is was the original Julie Newmar Catwoman costume. Casey, Cynthia, was given the Robin outfit.
What?
An ancient potion by Merlin the magician, boy wonder. It just add 1 part peyote and some other benign goodies.
It's only a small dose, Casey. You know how Z-Man is.
That costume was carrying a lot of vibrations.
Russ was a very harsh director.
As I said, he was like a big teddy bear, that he was very caring, that he had a sense of humor.
You never said no to Russ, ever. I mean, the more hot the conditions, the more terrible everything is, that's what Russ thrived on. That pushed him forward. I think that came from his Army days.
This was his big chance because it was with 20th Century Fox.
Beyond the Valley of the Dolls from 20th Century Fox.
I'm very sensitive, and he would say, I could replace you, you know.
One of his pet peeves is when actors blink.
He says, you blink, I cut away.
There was one scene at dinner, and I'm eating like this, and my eyes are like saucers.
And he's got these reflectors on you, and you're like, you know, like squinting your eyes, and he's like, nope, cut. You blinked again.
And then Russ wanted me to have an orgasm on screen. And I'm like, Russ, it's hard to have an orgasm off screen. Just when I was supposed to be at that crucial moment, then there's a scene of somebody dripping pancake batter on a hot grill.
I am honored to be a part of one of the greatest cult movies of all time. And I would have never thought that that would be sort of my legacy. And here it is. It's pretty good, right?
It's all about Eve set in Vegas. I always kind of looked, but not as good. That's terrible. That's a terrible thing to say.
I took a history of world cinema class in college, and the professor for that course showed us Showgirls and had written an essay about how the world will owe everyone involved with it an apology for trashing it when it first came out.
Paul Verhoeven's Showgirls, written by Joe Eszterhas. What is the plot? A young woman coming to the city trying to make good. It's sort of sinful the way chocolate is sinful.
You can sit a little bit closer if you want.
The whole idea of Showgirls was an alluring thing. There hadn't been anything done like that prior.
This brain-dead girl who goes to Vegas, and every cliche happens, including, you know, getting laid in the swimming pool.
The satirical aspect to Showgirls, you know, it has some very biting moments to it.
My name's Penny.
They want class, dum-dum. They don't want to fuck a Penny. They want to fuck a Heather or a Tiffany.
Honestly, when I first read the script, it didn't seem as intense as how the movie turned out in the end.
It's provocative. This rag-to-riches girl, you know, wanting to succeed.
I just hope that I can be as good as the show.
And then also taking them into a world that they hadn't experienced from behind the scenes. That's always interesting to see. There's a message in the ravioli. It fills you up. There's still a lingering message, a cautionary tale.
I don't know how good you are, darling, and I don't know what it is you're good at. But if it's at the cheetah, it's not dancing, I know that much.
You don't know shit!
When I first met Joe Eszterhas, I think he thought I was crazy because I was so into the part then I'd broken it down. I'm like, I know what you did. I was really into that Aphrodite myth. I'm like, I'm Aphrodite, she's Psyche, he's Cupid. And, you know, and I'm going into the whole mythology and he's looking at me, he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Showgirls became a cult picture because it was a failed seriousness, but on a grand scale. I mean, it was Paul Verhoeven with big production values. He'd made Basic Instinct, and this was like big time.
What makes anything a cult classic? It's the fans. You know, secretly in the back of my head, I thought, okay, the drag queens, if I succeed in this part, they'll want to dress like me for Halloween, which they did, so I felt like I did my job.
I actually think that Showgirls is sort of half camp and half a good movie. I really like Elizabeth Berkley in it. I think she has a genuine fury in that role, and that's what makes the movie work.
It kind of took on a Rocky Horror Picture vibe, because all of a sudden they were showing midnight viewings of Showgirls where people would dress up and say the lines.
Showgirls being probably the greatest example of a misfire by a studio and then finding a devoted crowd in these repertory cinemas that saw the film in a totally different way than it was originally made.
they kept calling me back, and I knew I was kind of nailing the audition. And, I'm in my character and dressed up and all that. And as soon as I did the kick, I literally heard this, like, and I thought, oh no, if you show that you hurt yourself, you lost the gig. And I don't know why, I just like pulled a total like Crystal Diva moment. I just don't feel it. I'll come back and dance. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. And I just left. It worked. I got the gig,
I want you to meet Hope.
Like we were playing it so serious instead of playing the comedy that's actually in the script.
If they take it out, come all over you, call a bouncer, unless he gives you a big tip. If he gives you a big tip, it's okay.
Okay.
When I got the movie, I was really excited because I was a huge fan of Paul's European films. I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to go be in this Wagner concert, this Wagner like opera. And, so I made Crystal pretty intense. When I got to the set, it was more kind of like a Britney Spears concert.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Stardust proudly presents Miss Crystal Connors.
It was like Technicolor, And so I basically just did a 180 and I changed my character.
You see, darling, you are a whore. Bitch.
I just thought it was like kind of kitsch and over the top and kind of funny and weird. And then when it was very seriously, you can't take that movie too seriously. I'm kind of dancing naked a little bit and, I'm hanging on by a rope in an S&M outfit, looking down at all these dancers, thinking, wow, like, how did I get here? Like, I studied the classics. Like, I was supposed to do Chekhov. I'm doing Tennessee Williams, I want to do Greek tragedies. It's like, shit.
Do you like my nails?
People choose their friends according to if you're in the showgirls culture and you understand the dialogue and you can rattle off the scenes.
I want my nipples to press, but I don't want them to look like they're levitating.
It has a whole new life now.
Dennis Miller, on one of his HBO specials, had said there are two great lines in all of film history. There is, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. I could have been a contender, Marlon Brando, and On the Waterfront. And it must be weird not having somebody come on you. Thank you, Bobby Davi. Must be weird not having anybody come on you.
I wonder if in 1995, if anyone was going to review Showgirls fairly. It's an NC-17 movie, so people feel dirty going in. It's a film that's very extreme. It's a film that's very bright. It's a film that's very forward. And I think it really didn't get a fair shake because I think critically people were extremely afraid to really deal with what it was.
I have to say, like, to this day, I cannot do an interview without some of those same critics saying, so what about Showgirls? And it's like, wait a second, weren't you the guy who panned it? Like, if you hated it so much, why are we still discussing it?
I think the critics want to have it both ways on Showgirls. I think they really, a lot of people do like it now, but they don't want to admit it. So it has to be a guilty pleasure. It has to be so bad it's good. There are a few of those Joe Eszterhas lines that are definitely over the top.
If you want to last longer than a week, you give me a blowjob. First I get you used to the money, then I make you swallow.
At the box office, it wasn't #1 and it didn't make all the money back. But it made how much? $100 million? $100 million for the DVD sales in VHS. It made a lot of money.
To me, the real tragedy is that America could not really embrace Showgirls in September of 1995 as the masterpiece that it is.
I was just hoping that it would launch my career, and I didn't know it was going to stick around for and get stronger and stronger after 20-something years. But then it turns out that that is my career. It's like, even no matter how much I work, it's always Showgirls.
The So Bad It's Good thing really sort of came to a head with Ed Wood, who was a filmmaker who no one saw his movies except us kids who would watch Plan 9 from Outer Space on television. But you have to admire the fact that he was able to personalize something for himself and turn it into these threadbare movies that he actually got made and got released.
A lot of them.
You know, and he thought no one knew who he was, which they kind of didn't while he was alive. Yeah. But then as soon as he passed away, just like Orson Welles, as soon as he passed away, oh, we loved him. We always loved him. But the sensibility of the movie is that what's funny about it is that it's attempts to be serious.
But is it outsider art? It almost is.
It is
like
outsider art.
It is outsider
Yeah.
art in a way. It's like something that he didn't do that to be in any way arty or humorous or everything. He was dead serious about it, but unhinged enough to not understand that the rest of the world didn't quite think the way he
Right.
did.
Single-minded cluelessness.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And remember, my friend, future events such as these will affect you in the future.
Ed Wood should be remembered as sort of one of the groundbreaking indie filmmakers in America.
The insanity of the whole thing. I mean, he's trying to make an epic sci-fi movie. Paper plates are spinning around, pretending to be flying saucers. I mean, it's just hilarious that he would do that.
I think Plan 9 from Outer Space is infectious.
Plan 9 from Outer Space is Ed Wood's sci-fi invasion picture.
But last night I saw a flying object that couldn't have possibly been from this planet.
A bunch of aliens show up on Earth and they use their powers to reanimate the dead, who then start stalking the Earth and turning into kind of quasi-vampire sort of things. I don't know, it's a little confusing.
They refuse our existence.
What plan will you follow now?
Plan 9.
Ah, yes. Plan 9 deals with the resurrection of the dead.
You have the fact that it went into the public domain rather early, and therefore it's a free movie. So one of the reasons people know it is because people programmed it on television a lot, and that added to its cult. And what draws people to that movie, I think there is this sort of Halloween, do-it-yourself, homemadeness.
Either the dialogue is so ridiculous it throws you out.
Suppose that saucer or whatever it was had something to do with this?
Your guess is as good as mine, Larry. One thing's sure. Inspector Clay's dead. And somebody's responsible.
Or the dialogue is so ridiculous and the actors are so inept.
You see? Your stupid minds. Stupid! That's all I'm taking from you. Get back here! Jack!
What do you make of that? She cut me. Didn't look that way a minute ago.
You know, so many people want to be filmmakers, but they wait for someone to give them permission. And that's part of the dilemma in being a filmmaker, is you need someone to give you money. Ed didn't wait. Ed went out and he would, if he had $500, he'd go shoot a day with Bela Lugosi coming out of his house. There's no narrative there. He says Bela Lugosi coming out of his house. 5 years later, he'll turn that into a film.
The ever-beautiful flowers she had planted with her own hands became nothing more than the lost roses of her cheeks.
What makes it a cult picture, it was Bela Lugosi's last film. Watching Bela Lugosi and knowing that he died before it was done.
All of us on this earth know that there is a time to live and that there is a time to die.
And that there was a stand-in pretending to be Bela Lugosi. And then when you have the information that was actually Ed Wood's dentist, who he dragged into the thing because the guy was starstruck.
That kind of captures how Ed Wood was probably the worst filmmaker of all time, but in part because he was one of the most passionate. He was trying to make great movies. Ed Wood was the first biopic that Scott and I had written, so we were insanely proud of the movie.
Cue Dr. Tom.
Now?
Yes, now. Alert him. Be sure and keep your face covered. Isn't it wonderful?
There was no way of knowing when cinema was invented that you and I would be able to connect in our brains the idea of a shot over here, a shot over there, cut together, that we would make sense of it. Well, thank you, Ed Wood, for reminding us, by virtue of his genius for ineptitude, that this shot over here might not match this shot over here. He breaks the continuity.
If an audience goes and sits down and they're seeing a flying saucer movie and you can clearly see the string of the flying saucer dangling over the town, that will make audiences roll their eyes. That will make them check out of the movie.
And cut. All right, friends. Prepare for scene 32.
Mr. Wood, where's the cockpit set?
You're standing.
Trouble?
Take a look for yourself.
World.
That's nothing from this world.
So you always heard these wacky things about how he put together these horrible films, but there was always this heart underneath it. We always saw the movie that we wrote, Ed Wood, as a love story between him and Bela, about what happens when you meet your hero.
Fuck you! Karloff does not deserve to smell my shit!
That limey cocksucker can rot in hell for all I care.
And we thought that was something that really gave Ed Wood a soul, as opposed to just being a commentary on a guy who made bad films. What we like to ask about our characters is, why will they be remembered? And the two reasons why Ed will be remembered is, one is his relationship with Bela Lugosi, and two is he made, quote-unquote, the worst movie of all time. It gave us an ending, which was, the ending was, he makes the worst film of all time, but according to Ed, it's the film he'll be remembered for, and that's exactly what he is remembered for.
So it's that kind of epic cheapness and the fact that there was a genuine Hollywood legend involved in it that makes it an irresistible kind of cult movie.
Well, you can complain about whether it is the worst film of all time or is that unfair, but the bottom line, that's what put him on the map. And so, I think at the end of the day, at least people are watching it. And I think if people are watching it and getting some enjoyment out of it, it's not the worst film of all time.
Can you prove that it didn't happen?
Glen or Glenda, his first film, it's his expression of what it was to be a cross-dresser in the 1950s, before anyone knew what this stuff was.
People, all with their own thoughts, their own ideas. One might say, there, but for the grace of God, go I.
In some ways, in the trans era, that movie looks more and more bold and ahead of its time.
Glen is engaged to be married to Barbara, a lovely, intelligent girl. The problem? Glenda, Glen's other self. He's not had the nerve to tell her. Should he tell Barbara of his Glenda now, before the wedding, or hit her between the eyes with it after, when it might be too late for either of them?
I don't think it's fair to call Ed Wood the worst director of all time. I don't even think Ed's a bad director. I actually think Ed's a very weird, strange director.
All right, everybody, let's get set up for scene 112. Move the crypt stage left and let's get Thor's makeup effect ready.
Mr. Wood, what do you think you're doing?
I'm directing.
Not like that, you're not.
There's no way to look at Glen or Glenda and not see a man making a personal statement, and almost an avant-garde personal statement. He is starring, directing this film, and it's all about his personal dilemma about being a transvestite in that time period. And he's doing it with a narrative section of the movie, and he's doing it with these avant-garde sections. It's incredibly strange, and I actually think once you know the true story, it's kind of impossible to laugh at it anymore.
What he was doing was totally outrageous, but there's just this wonderful, naive, earnest quality to that movie where he's saying, accept me for who I am. And there's no film technique to get in between the audience and his plea. So you just feel something very passionate and very pure and, in its way, kind of hilarious watching Glen or Glenda. It's the one Ed Wood movie that I find I can go back to over and over again.
I guess like Rocky Horror, we were, Rocky Horror's blonde-headed stepchild.
I am thrilled you could join me for the fabulous first night of the St. Louis leg of my world tour.
A cult film has nothing to do with how good the film is, even how popular it is, but it's how it became popular and how strongly a certain group of people care about it. Well, Hedwig is about an East German gay boy who dreams of freedom. He's in the communist side of Berlin in the 80s.
My name is Sergeant Luther Robinson.
My name is Hansen. And he meets an American GI who suggests a gender reassignment so he can get married and get out of communist Germany.
You gotta leave something behind.
Is kind of grifted and is left. So has to pick herself up, now a woman, not even wanting to be a woman, write some songs, get a band together, and try to save herself, try to define herself, try to find out who she is.
My 16's operation got botched. My guardian angel fell asleep on the watch. Now all I've got is a Barbie doll tracks. I've got an angry ex.
It's a serious story about a transgender person, and I think it appeals to people who are on the outside, because when it was originally done, nobody was more on the outside. And as times have changed and we're getting to the point where people are actually fighting in the Supreme Court to go to the bathroom they want to go to, it's become more relevant.
From this milkless tit, you sucked the very business we call
show.
You know, Hedwig is pretty low and climbs up. So it's about healing and healing trauma.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Why can't we... Why don't you write a new song?
It's a rock and roll concert at the heart of it. So I think it combines all of those things. It's a much more modern cult movie.
I really love when Hedwig sings Wicked Little Town in a kind of Dunkin' Donuts to, you know, 4 or 5 people who she may have tricked with. And then you realize that her lover Tommy is hiding behind some plant. There's no dialogue in that scene. I like how simple it is. Yeah, you know, Stephen Trask, composer, and I wanted to capture the energy of a real rock and roll show. So we did things in the film that made sense to us. So recording live was important as an actor. I kind of burned out. It was so hard that I quit acting for 15 years. I just used everything I knew as an actor, as a singer, as a performer, as a writer, as a director. Our last day of shooting was 20 hours, and we did their scene where they kiss for the first time.
Breathe through my mouth.
And Tommy says, breathe through my mouth, which is something a lover said to me in the 80s. But it was very romantic, and the walls of the trailer park open up like a diorama, but things go wrong when he discovers the front of her, which is her trauma, which is her complexity, you know, the complexity of her life and gender and past. And it's too much for him because he's running ultimately from the complexity of himself as a person who could love someone that unique. And I really do love that scene. New Line knew, their term was, it's gonna have shelf life. So they knew to invest in a very expensive DVD that had a ton of features. We made a huge 90-minute making of thing. There was a ton of stuff, and they were right. They made their money back in profit. We never saw a cent, and people found it. It also came out a few weeks before 9/11, and many people later said that they saw Hedwig on September 12th. All the cinemas let everyone in for free that day, and many, many people saw Hedwig that day in New York, and it said it made them feel better. And it was connected to something that was traumatic. It stayed alive because of DVD and midnight screenings and the soundtrack.
The original movie will continue on, I suspect. But Hedwig is very much on the money right now because it's a huge issue.
My favorite cult films kind of shoot for the moon for popular success, and then they fail. But then a certain group of people rediscovers it. They kind of culture it, you know, like a garden. And it has a long life. There's always the truism, you know, I'd rather be 10 people's favorite thing than a million people's so-so thing. And I truly believe that. And if that's cult, then I'm cult. You know, I'm happy with that.
Female Trouble came out, was not a success. It did not open at midnight. It opened at a regular run, and it didn't get great reviews. People were disappointed that it wasn't more hideous than Pink Flamingos or something. But today, of my Divine movies, I think it is by far the most popular one. The people that yell the lines to me when I'm, you know, all the people when they yell my own lines to me. I'm walking down the street in New York and the girl says, I'm glad I got an abortion. I thought, why did she just say that to me? And I thought, oh, I wrote that. Hi, thank you, thank you.
Female Trouble, which is his next film after Pink Flamingos, in many ways much slicker, but just as sick and crazy.
But I think Female Trouble is a true pinnacle, because there are all these great lines like, who wants to die for art?
Who wants to be famous? Who wants to die for art? I do!
Stars Divine as Dawn Davenport, and she begins as a child, and when she doesn't get her cha-cha heels for Christmas.
What are these?
Those are your new shoes, Dawn.
Those aren't the right kind. I told you cha-cha heels, black ones.
Dawn grows up, has a family, becomes a kind of a sick individual, having her face disfigured by acid.
I got something for your face, motherfucker!
Divine becomes like crazier and uglier, and she's more beautiful.
Pretty, pretty, yeah!
And ends up being electrocuted. And she saw her death and the execution as like
being a positive experience for her.
My big moment in the electric chair.
Oh, you still think you're in a show, baby?
And she gives a little speech about, almost like an acceptance speech. I think Female Trouble is one of the great cult films of all time because I think John Waters polished his act a little bit with the film. It's a lot more professional, better sets, not better acting.
I'm going to live with the Hare Krishna people.
What did you say?
The Krishnas are love, Mother.
Oh, God, I would have killed you at birth had I thought you would even entertain such an idea.
More interesting and diverse characters. The audiences ate it up. I remember that kind of followed Pink Flamingos. That run ended and then Female Trouble started. Some were disappointed that's not as shocking as Pink Flamingos, but in many ways it's stranger and just as enjoyable though.
Sexually repressed couple murders swingers and eats them. That'll make them go see it. I mean, I had to describe that movie a lot to get people in the theater. It was not a hit right away.
Paul Bartel had a really hard time getting financing for this movie, and I always thought the people that he kills off in the movie represented the people who turned him down.
Scalpel.
Scalpel.
Suture.
Suture.
Frying pan.
Eating Raoul is one of my favorite movies that I ever made.
Funny thing is that he is a real doctor. I recognize him from the hospital.
The reason why is because it's so incredibly different. And I had a big part in it because they let me do whatever I wanted.
This world is overflowing with millions of sexual freaks.
We're so lucky to have found each other.
The appeal of somebody like Mary Woronov, who is a cult actress, is discovery, where you just say, hey, you know, I like that person. Where have I seen her before? Eating Raoul, she's the lead.
Mary's a sweetheart. She was one of the cult queens of the 1970s and 80s, thanks to her work with Paul Bartel.
Did you ever do any acting?
I did some in high school.
Well, that's all it is acting. Lick my sneakers, you little worm. See what I mean? It's easy.
Lick my sneaker, you little worm.
See, you're a natural.
It's a cannibal movie, people eating people, murdering people, Mary Woronov dressing up like a dominatrix, and there's something very polite about this movie.
Hey, mister, get off her. Are you crazy? I told you, man, I can't wait.
Which is contradictory to the subject matter. And I think that's part of the appeal. There's always this little air of sophistication element to a real B-horror movie topic.
We have to come up with $25,000 by Friday, or another couple is going to take the place and turn it into a clinic for rich, fat people.
He would call me up and he would say, oh, Mary, I think we have the money to get it together again. Do you think, yeah, sure, Paul, what are we doing? Oh, do you remember this? No, I don't. Well, it doesn't matter, really. You'll just come down and we'll tell you what to do. Okay, fine.
Don't be afraid. Fear is a mind trap, baby. What we fear is the past becoming the future. What we really have is now.
I mean, the whole crew had parts in that movie because we didn't have the time to hire an actor. We never decorated a set. That apartment we were in, a nut job lived there. I mean, he was in love with a certain 50s thing or something.
Mary, why don't we sell your mother's collection of fabulous 50s furniture?
Oh, no, Paul. You know Mama only loaned it to us until she dies.
Then he didn't have any money to buy film. You cannot work without film and the camera.
You have been earning money from an evil undertaking. And if you keep it up, you will burn for all eternity in hell.
Hey, sister, I'm in hell right now.
Nobody went to see that movie. I mean, nobody. I remember Paul, he was dragging me to the movie because he didn't want to be alone.
Raoul, that's wonderful.
And then he would run around buying cookies and then go down the line giving people little cookies. So they would stay in line and go to the movie. I don't know, it was awful. I said, Paul, this isn't how we're supposed to be acting.
This somehow got word of mouth and got put as a midnight movie, and it's not like any other midnight movie of the era ever.
Very nice of you to ask us, but we're actually into St. Bernard's.
Really?
Certainly Eating Raoul was on its own, because it wasn't really a horror movie. I mean, we did eat someone, so what? There were jokes in it.
I hope you make this a permanent item on your menu.
It's French.
No, actually, it's more Spanish.
It's so tender.
It's funny, It's well written, and we like these characters who are not the typical lead characters in movies.
And nobody ever thought of throwing a radiator into a hot pool and killing like 25 people. That's ridiculous. We did it.
Well, swing on this.
So you might be wondering, what's become of the cult movie today? We've talked about the way it used to be, and now we're going to talk about the way it is now. The fact is that there are still cult movies, and there are still midnight shows, although not as many as there used to be. But in keeping the tradition alive, there are still a bunch of movies that have come out that have their followings, and there are even some, like The Room, that are packing the theaters at night with people who come and talk back to the screen and throw things at the screen and know the movie by heart.
There was laughter from beginning to end at the level of absurdity.
Did you watch the whole thing? Did you make it to the end?
You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you do have to.
You
okay.
have to, because there's no payoff. It is
you-
extraordinarily bad, and you know that he didn't realize it as he was doing it, and that's part of the joy of enjoying it.
Mhm.
And it's fantastic that he's now coming out to all these sold-out theaters. He's making appearances saying,
yeah.
we knew it was...
you're live.
Oh, you're so full of shit.
Holy shit, this is the best, worst movie I've ever seen.
Like, it's like watching a snuff film to me. You know what I mean? It's just like a movie going terribly wrong.
It's so bad, it's wonderful.
Hi, doggy. You're my favorite customer. Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye-bye.
First, let me thank you for correcting my decades-long mispronunciation of his name. I always thought it was Wiseau, but it's Wiseau? All right, interesting.
I met Tommy Wiseau in an acting class. He was writing, producing, directing, starring in The Room. And he came to me, and I read the script, and he wanted me to play the role of Mark. I used to know a girl. She had a dozen guys. One of them found out about it, beat her up so bad she ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street.
What a story, Mark.
Yeah, you can say that again.
I don't think I've ever laughed as hard as I laughed from the first 20 minutes of The Room.
It's essentially about this guy named Johnny, who's a creepy guy.
Hi, babe. I have something for you.
What is it?
Just a little something.
And he has this girlfriend who keeps taking her top off for some reason.
All I have to do is put on my party dress.
They're about to get married, and she ends up having an affair with his best friend, and it's sort of like how Tommy reacts to it.
How could you do this to me? I gave you 7 years of my life.
And the movie's filled with all sorts of ridiculous dialogue, non sequiturs, continuity mistakes, horrible, boring stock footage. It's just an awful movie.
Come on. I didn't know what the story was. Where you really want to get invested. But then you're like, what is actually happening?
The Room is a movie you can't put down. You know, some people think that they're like watching a train wreck, so that's why. But I think it's the passion, man. I think it's watching some people who know absolutely nothing about what they're doing try to pull it off. And in a sense, they succeed. But those cats are no different than me and my friends.
Yeah, the Cult of the Room started with two young filmmakers. One of them was going to USC, and they were, they walked by the theater and they saw a sign that said, "No refunds." We're like, okay, let's check this out. And so they went in there, and within like 20 minutes, they were calling people on their phone saying, "This film's incredible, you gotta come see it."
You know, I had heard so much about The Room, and I didn't want to watch it on DVD. I wanted to experience it live because I heard that's the way to see it. And I'm still thinking about it weeks later. Not necessarily about the movie, but about the experience of seeing it with an audience.
Fans took ownership of The Room, and they've turned it into this experience that we haven't really seen since Rocky Horror.
Early cult films like Rocky Horror Picture Show, you had to go to the theater to see it. Later cult films like The Room, maybe it becomes about audiences needing that sense of being in a room together. Oh my gosh, now The Room seems like the most symbolic name ever.
People are shouting out lines. They keep walking by, for some reason, these framed pictures of spoons. So people yell, "Spoons, spoons," and they throw all these plastic spoons at the screen. I was sitting on the second row, so I was watching the whole movie like this.
I mean, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's never going to be the way it was for us when we were kids, when there was a Rocky Horror Picture Show. But the room got very, very close. Like, I remember going to the Lumley and people interacting with it and being like, these kids are trying to play Rocky Horror.
You know, when I found out that the room had celebrity fans, my mind was blown. I think Jonah Hill would attend screenings of the room back in like 2005, 2006. David Cross would show up wearing a wig, dressed up as Tommy.
The camp cult following happened for years before he would acknowledge, oh, well, I meant it to be funny, which is a lie.
I think Tommy, first of all, as a writer, I think he thinks he's Tennessee Williams.
His goal with the room was to become the next Marlon Brando.
I think his Lisa, I think that's all like Streetcar Named Desire.
Hey, Stella! You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Well, I appreciate that he wanted to be our generation's Marlon Brando. We still had Marlon Brando, but maybe he had just seen The Island of Dr. Moreau and was like, I'm going to step in here.
I was in an acting class with Tommy.
If I had to describe his acting as few words, I would say...
For the making of this film, he was using scenes that he'd written in our scene study class.
Confusing.
You know, the scene study classes work like this. You know, you get up there, you do your scene, you get off so the next actors can get up there and do their thing. Not with Tommy.
Poor.
Tommy comes in, he sets all the lights up, he's setting it up.
Off.
He like basically kept our class hostage. Nobody else could do their scenes because he wouldn't get off the stage. And he finally got kicked out of our class. But that's not all, folks.
Arthritic.
Because he got kicked out.
Mild desperation.
He bought the building and kicked us out.
If he had set the bar here and said, you know, I'm going to be this generation's early Shia LaBeouf, and then, you know, he's closer to that.
My favorite scene in the room would have to be the Chris R scene, because I feel like it encapsulates everything that's insane about the movie. You know, this drug dealer shows up for 30 seconds, and you have this, you know, ridiculous fight that occurs, and then all of the characters end up on the roof for no reason, and then they all walk off together.
Where's my fucking money, Danny? Put the gun down. My fucking money! Where's my fucking money, Danny? Look at this guy. Get on. Fucker. Fucking dead, Danny. What's going on? Shut up. Danny.
Let's take him to the police.
Fucking dead.
There's too many good scenes, and every one of the iconic scenes, are great. You know, the I did not hit her, I did not, oh, hi, Mark. I mean, that one.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Well, as an actor, I think that line is about as juicy as a line gets. Sometimes less is more, but sometimes more is more. And in that case, more is more.
I remember, like, watching The Room become, like, an underground sensation. If you knew, you knew. If you were hip, oh, you loved it. If you were in a big city, heavens, man. And then I remember it got so serious that they made a movie about it.
This set of the alleyway looks exactly like the real alleyway.
That's right.
Well, why don't we just shoot in the real alleyway?
Because it's a real Hollywood movie.
No, yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Action!
I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
James Franco, he actually read the book first and thought it was just a very, very insane Hollywood story. He's the perfect guy to have adapted it. I think The Room is one of the greatest cult films of all time because it's done something that no other film has ever done, in the sense that it's played now in theaters for 15 years. It never had any chance of making it. It never had any help. It never had any stars. And it's continued to screen around the world just by the voice of the people.
I didn't see a bad movie. I saw Passion. You know, I saw Clerks when I saw that movie.
Those guys are all busting their ass, and I guarantee you they all thought it was going to be their big break, because that's how you feel. And I guess for some of them, they're right. It was.
People usually ask me, do you regret doing The Room, and I always think, how could I? You know, you could be in 10 films that are good that would have never, you know, responded with people the way this one does. So at the end of the day, it's about being in a film that people love.
They had a bit of a longer climb, but wound up getting to roughly the same place. A movie that lives in infamy.